What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Vault. Alongside myself, I got my man here, Mr. Walter Morgan. What's going on, Walt?
Oh, the spider's nasty today.
Why is he nasty today?
It might
Hungry.
be
Ain't
too
fed
hot.
the fucker in a while. I don't know. It is getting hot in California. Anyway, but before we get into this, we want all you guys to watch the show on TV because it looks so much better. Everybody has smart TVs. Watch it on your YouTube
And you
channel
can be
on your
comfortable
TV.
from
Yeah,
your
besides
couch,
it looks better and it sounds better that way. Yeah.
That's the way I do it.
That's the way I do it too. Oh, and by the way, if you want to send someone a message from me, go to cameo.com.
Death Wish coffee. Get it at your grocery shelves. It's zippy in the morning.
It'll get you zippy. That's why we drink it. And if you haven't got your Zetro's Toxic Vault t-shirt and our new patches, go to greyhavenmedia.net. Well, today we are going to talk about, and you guys have been hounding me for this, talk about the recording and the making of the records, and we're going to start with my first album. We're going to start with Pleasures of the Flesh. 1987, right? Well,
Long time ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, really. Was it? Really doesn't seem like that.
No, it doesn't.
You had more hair back then because we already saw pictures.
And your hair
on that.
wasn't gray, so
it wasn't, but it is. But I still have it. That's the bottom line. So this was the time around. I joined in June of '86, Exodus in June of '86, and they had signed to a record label called Torrid, and who actually put out Bonded by Blood. But back then there was a lot of independent labels, upstarts, and they were signing bands out of nowhere, offering tons of money, which they really didn't know what they were doing at the time. And unfortunately, Exodus signed with one of those labels. And I love Todd Gordon and Ken. I see Todd now when we're in tour in Europe, New York. He comes and sees us, and we're all cool. And everything was always cool back then. But it was a position where Exodus was ready to put out another record, but Torrid wasn't ready to put out another record. And when you're contractually bound to something at that time, especially music, you just can't move on.
You had like a 2-record deal with them?
I think it was 2 or 3. I'm not quite sure because I didn't sign it. It was signed before, I was in the band, when Bailoff was in the band. And so the trick was trying to get off of the label at that time. And so they were kind of fielding offers from other labels that were, interested in maybe buying us off them.
And that's back when they counted record sales, right?
Well, that was, by the clicker, I think they did it. They had somebody actually counting them. And this is a time also, when major labels are doing development deals with bands. So thrash metal was coming up, but not all that prominent yet. Metallica had just done, Ride the Lightning had just come out. Bonded by Blood had just come out. Slayer had Hell Awaits come out, which from Show No Mercy. So it was starting. People were hearing it. It wasn't making a lot of noise yet. So major labels at that time were doing this thing. Well, we'll do a development deal with you, and they'll bring you in and they'll listen to your songs, and if they think you're worthy, they'll put it out. And we were like, fuck that. We've already proven we sell out everywhere we go. You know what I mean? Or the band did even before I was in the band. Exodus sold out.
They had a big status.
They had their own thing going on, their own sound. So that wasn't for us. And we finally ran into Combat, who really, really wanted the band, and they were willing to go to Todd and Ken and say, hey, we'll purchase Exodus from you. And I'm not quite sure what the money was to get Exodus off that label and onto Combat. And I remember signing with Combat that night. We all went out to, they flew out from New York to Berkeley. We signed the deals. They came out to, we went to Maxwell's Plum restaurant, which is a really posh restaurant in San Francisco at that time, and we looked how we looked, leather jackets. I remember we went out with Elliot Kahn, who was our lawyer at that time, who has
Green Day manager,
Testament. I mean, down the history, many
a lot of bands.
Yeah, he was there when I hired Alex. That's a total another story.
I think you guys bought him a house.
I probably. Anyway, we went to this. I remember I had lobster, and we were throwing the lobster on the table, and our management was encouraging this behavior because that's kind of how it was. So we signed to Combat, and we're going to do a record with them. And it's kind of time has gone through. It's been a while to work this out. So we got into the studio around the spring of '87 because I remember the A's were playing that I think I went from a game to the studio. That's the only reason I can remember that. And we started the album with a guy named Mark Whitaker, who actually did some Metallica stuff. He did Bonded by Blood, and he started doing the drum tracks, and something happened with the drums and him, and I'm not a drummer, so I wasn't in on this. And he
did complete the tracks.
He did complete the drum tracks, and he was removed from that. And then it was Mark Senesac and Sylvia.
Wasn't he the assistant engineer?
He was the assistant engineer, and we were like, hey, well, we'll produce it with you.
And this was in San Francisco at
Alpha and Omega Studios,
which is in like the Tenderloin.
in a very bad area, owned by Sandy Pearlman, who had produced all the great Blue Oyster Cult stuff. This was his studio that he owned, and it was like, my first time in the studio. What a great, atmosphere to walk in, just overwhelmed.
The big boards and
exactly. And so Mark took over the rest of the record. Mark Senesac, along with Gary, Rick, and kind of all of us. We kind of produced it. Although I didn't produce, I really didn't know what I was doing. I just, when I was time to do my vocals, I kind of went in there and did what I knew. And it was in, like you said, in a very seedy part of San Francisco.
But once you walk through those doors.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was beautiful. It was a palace once you got through the doors. So, but there was always like, the drug dealers outside and the drug addicts and
that kind of plays into the story a bit, right?
That kind of thing. Well, a little bit, yeah, kind of. So we start recording the record in the spring of '87, and the album
after almost 2.5 years.
Well,
right?
yeah, because the record didn't get released until
right
September of '87. So from the release of Bonded by Blood, which was May of '85, it would have almost been two.
So you had it in the can a little bit too, right?
I think it was in the can for like the whole summer because it kept getting pushed back. And at that time, we're looking at it like it's a lot of time, taking forever and forever to get this record out. And so, but the recording process happened. We were in the studio in San Francisco, and back in those days, you pretty much recorded 24 hours a day. If somebody was in the studio,
because it's so expensive.
Well,
right?
yeah, if somebody was in the studio, somebody else was sleeping, and then move in to do their parts. And so, as you guys all have heard, the album opens up with a guy we called him Tom Skid. Life's kind of getting out of control. And basically where that came from was the first opening song on the album is called Deranged. And what we wanted to do was get a deranged kind of character to, come in. And they were listening to samples and other things but that wasn't big at that time like it is now. So what a better idea than to walk out on the street and actually get one of these guys. I don't even know if his name was Tom, but they called him Tom Skid. And what that is it's probably a 2.5 hour edits of a 2.5 hour conversation with the guy.
So
I wasn't
brought
there.
him in the studio.
Well, I wasn't there. Gary and Rick did this with Mark Senesac, and they brought him in because it was done like at 2 a.m, late at night. We were night owls in those days. We ran 24/7, and
I bet.
Yeah, we sure did, and we had help, and it was one of those things where I got there the next day and they were like, "Oh, Zetro, wait till you hear this." And what happened? Well, we brought this guy in, we brought him some food and some wine, and we just kind of had a conversation. So it's not a straight conversation. The guys were trying to make him sound deranged, but they edit it together really well. So it does. And basically he sat out in the studio area, and they were behind the booth, and they had a call back, and they were talking to him on the headphone, so you can only hear his answer back. And that was how that was edited in there. We never saw him again. He doesn't
even know his own fame.
No, I guess he does. He's probably, he's got to be dead now. Unless he happened to clean him up like the guy in Bum Fights did. I don't know, but he didn't look like that. I don't know. I never got to see him. And so that's how Deranged came out. And again, Deranged was the opening song on the first side, because back then there was sides to records, first and second side.
And that's a fast one, right?
And that's the fast one. Obviously, it's Gary and Rick riffing up, going up one end of the fretboard to the other, and kind of fast way to kick off an Exodus record. And then the second song is Till Death Do Us Part, and that was the first one that I wrote, actually lyrically, for Exodus, and that was pretty much about back then there was the stickering of the records, and there was all this stuff on, heavy metal's getting a bad rap for being Satanists and the whole PMRC thing. So what we did was
Explicit lyrics.
Pretty much wrote a song. Exactly. You're right. If you said fuck on your album, it got stickered, which to them was a double-edged sword, because to me, if you tell a kid that stickered, it's going to say fuck on this album, they're going to fucking
They're not going to buy the clean version.
Exactly. They're going to buy it. So, which kind of worked against them, you know what I mean? But there's a line in the song that says, we'll write the songs the way we want, spell it out the way it is. Our music is not a front. It's all about the way we live, and it's kind of like fuck you. We'll write what we want. We'll play this type of metal. We'll say what we want. Stick our albums, kind of go fuck yourself.
What I love about that song is Tom's intro with the drums. Very epic, very, his style, it just speaks on that intro, and it goes into the
and
song.
A lot of bands don't open with drums in their songs, but we do, because I think even on this record, I think Seeds of Hate, he'll love for you to say that. Seeds of Hate also opens up with the drums, but that was the first two songs. The first one I wrote lyrically. Third song on the record is one we just brought back in a set recently. It's one of my favorites to play. It was Gary's kind of part two of Piranha for this record, and this one's a Parasite. Really fast, triplet, guitar chugging in it.
You haven't played that song in forever. I mean,
we just brought it back on the last tour. Yeah, on the last tour. I know.
It was a long time.
It took a while to get it back in the set, because that one's painful. That's a browbeater. It hurts them. Definitely to play them, dude. It does, man. That one for me, it's easy, but for those guys, man, that picking, it just goes that way through the whole fucking song. The lead section, the dual lead together, Rick and Gary at their finest on that song. I think it really goes to show or exemplify what the H Team has to offer, and the second record out, and then. The next song's one of our favorites, right?
Right. It's Brain Dead.
One of your favorites, too.
Oh, it is. And I remember way back in the day when you started the Pleasures touring for the first time. And for a long time, it was the closer of the encore, right? You always played it
we
last.
Did. We played it at the end. At that time, we only had Bonded by Blood and Pleasures of Flesh. So, now we end with Strike of the Beast, and we do the whole thing. And that's the way, the crescendo of the ending. But this one was the one we ended with, and it kind of got everybody in a much. This is one that also was off of a demo that they had put out in between Bonded by Blood and this with Bailoff, just to try to get some different label interest, and it had this and two other songs on this album. This was I did not write this. This is typical Paul Bailoff right here.
I have a very rare CD that Combat put out with the demo and some live songs, and with Paul singing these songs. Very rare. I think it goes for like $250 on eBay.
Yeah, but you could probably just go to YouTube and
That's true. Craig didn't
get
think
that and get that.
It was a real release, but it is, and it's very rare. But anyway,
it is Bailoff at his best. The last thing he did with Exodus, actually, if you can find it.
Right. And then we go into another song that's kind of an obscure track.
That closes out side one.
Faster Than You'll Ever Live to Be.
And Faster Than You Ever Live to Be was another one that I wrote lyrically, and I actually was like, well, what is this song? They have the title. That's typical Exodus. Gary will give me the title, and he'll say, he'll tell me, oh, we'll just write it about this. This was like the first one of that. And they were on tour in Europe with Venom and Slayer. And the only movie that they had on their tour bus was High Plains Drifter. And there's a part in the movie where Clint says some part about a guy asks him if you're fast. And he says, faster than you ever lived to be. So basically, I watched the movie and then I kind of wrote the movie, around that. But
what a great title!
Great song too.
Yeah,
really fast. Good lead section. A good little kind of middle breakdown before it tears off in the lead section. Really good one. And then that's the end of side one.